Hi fiber friends, this is Mindy with Henley Handmade. I naturally dye yarn for fiber artists so they can create mindfully. I'm having difficulties recording this today between my kids and my own stumbling over words. I'm gonna just try to keep this short so that I can get this out to you. I was noticing that some of my posts on social media, I include pictures of one colorway dyed up on my two different bases, and the colors look very different within that picture, and I don't think I've ever addressed that, or at least not directly. So I wanted to show you, give you some examples, and maybe talk to you a little bit about why that is. This is my flannel pajama colorway, and you can see this is the fingering weight base, and this is the worsted weight base. And you can see the fingering weight base took the dye very differently. It looks a lot more yellow in the fingering weight than it does in the worsted weight. And that has to do with the fiber content. So this is 100% non-superwash Rambouillet wool, and this is 85% Rambouillet, 15 alpaca. And alpaca typically takes dye in a more muted way. It doesn't take up the dye as richly, and so that's gonna be why they look different. And as a contrast, I wanted to show you poinsettia, which is coming up super bright red on my screen. It is not that bright at all. It's a lot more muted. But this is the worsted weight, this is the fingering weight, and they took the dye almost exactly the same. In fact, it's, when I look at it myself, I really can't tell that much of a difference. And quite honestly, I'm not quite sure why some dyes look very different than others. Partly it could be when I'm mixing dyes, there might be just a tad more of one color than another. But I mean, I'm pretty, I weigh out my dyes, so it should be pretty exact, but it's interesting to me that you can get such variance, and I thought I would show you a couple more examples here. This is the flickering candle colorway, this is the worsted weight, this is the fingering weight, and you can see that the fingering weight is definitely a darker golden than the worsted weight. Very interesting. And that, I mean, I'm sure that has to do with the alpaca, because the alpaca just doesn't take the dye as deeply, as strongly. And then one more example of yarn taking the dye very similarly would be the peppermint pink colorway. You really can't, I can't really tell a difference between the worsted weight and the fingering weight in this color, in this dye, which I find interesting as well. Part of it is just because I'm dealing with natural ingredients, and nature has natural variances in it that can't be controlled like a man-made dye can. So it's part of the beauty of naturally dyed, of anything that's naturally dyed, is seeing the influence that nature has on it to make it different from, anything else that you can find out there. The other thing I wanted to mention was, and I probably don't talk about this often enough, when you're knitting or crocheting with hand-dyed yarn, you really want to, if you're using more than one skein, you really want to alternate rows, every maybe 2, 3, 4 rows, whatever your preference is, so that if there is some variance between one skein to another, that is kind of being evenly distributed throughout your project, and not here's one colorway and here's another, well, it's the same colorway, but one batch, here's the next batch, because you will see a difference. And you know what, that actually is a good point. I need to share a project where I didn't alternate skeins. I will do that next time, just because it's really interesting to me, and I think it turned out fine in this particular project, but I could see how it might bother some people. So I'm going to give you a good example of what not to do, and I'll tell you why I chose to do it in that particular project. But I hope you have really, really lovely holidays, and that you have lots of time to sit and knit and be with the people that you love, and yeah, just have a warm, woolly holiday. Thank you. Bye.